We are 234 days away from the midterms and heading into the third week of the war with Iran, a war that has cost the American taxpayer over $11 billion in the first week alone. According to the Pentagon estimates, the conflict has also caused the deaths of thousands of people, including several American servicemen and women. As the U.S. and Israel continue their bombing campaigns, Iran has retaliated with missiles and drone strikes across the entire region while blocking, and this is hugely important, the Strait of Hormuz, a vital shipping channel for a fifth of the world's oil. The war has sent energy prices soaring, and across the globe, people are feeling the effects, including here on U.S. soil. And now, of course, there is new reporting that the Pentagon plans to move more Marines and warships into the region. Let's bring in our nightcap. It is an excellent one. My colleague and friend, Catherine Rampell, she's the co-host of the evening edition of The Weekend and the economics editor for The Bulwark. Nayyera Haq joins us, former White House senior director and former State Department senior advisor. She's now the assistant dean for Syracuse Maxwell School in D.C. Christina Greer joins us, associate professor of political science at Fordham University. And Sami Sage, co-founder of Betches and author of Democracy in Retrograde. Ladies, there's a lot for us to cover. Nayyera, the Wall Street Journal is reporting, or they're citing that 3 U.S. officials as their sources are telling us that more Marines and more warships are heading to the region. At the same time, we keep hearing they're wrapping this up. They want this over. This doesn't sound like a wind down to me.
No, and the story, the rhetoric is not matching the reality on the ground because we're clearly not winning either. It's very unclear what the objectives are, what the goals are. Trump says that he wants to get out sooner rather than later and wrap this up in days. But I have family member in the Air Force who had to cancel a wedding in June because he's expecting and anticipating a deployment. So to get people out and back takes time. I mean, these are the realities of what our armed folks in the armed forces have to deal with, and it's not just the reality that lives in Trump's head.
As fighting spreads across the region, as the Strait of Hormuz is essentially closed, how do you look at this in terms of wartime management in this administration?
Well, first things first. The Constitution clearly states that only Congress can declare war. So the fact that we're even in this situation because the president has decided that, this is a knee-jerk reaction that he decided to jump in, and it had no economic consequences or no economic plan to go beyond this, no real plan to think about service members and how we're going to have, is it a boots on the ground? Is it drones? Is it something else? And so the reality is, and this makes me think about the State of the Union, just because the president says it's so, we're winning, things are great, everyone's feeling much better. American people weren't feeling better before this started economically. Gas prices weren't down, grocery prices weren't down, rental prices weren't down, housing prices weren't down. Like the conversation goes on, and now he's exacerbated it indefinitely. So when he says, we'll wrap it up soon, based on what? Well, obviously not intelligence.
They didn't clearly message why they were getting into this war, and so whether we're getting out or not, we don't know the messaging around that either.
No, it's hard to know when we have achieved our objectives if we don't know what the objectives are. And Donald Trump was asked, I think yesterday, how will you know when it's over? And he said, I'll feel it in my bones. His bones.
When
first,
the market officially tanks, those bones.
Yes, he will feel it then. And to your question about the Strait of Hormuz, there were a lot of things that the administration could have done in preparation here, right? Aside from whatever the military strategy would be and the objectives, which we don't know. There are a bunch of things that they could have done, like oil stockpiles were at a multi-decade low. We sold off our helium stockpile, which is important for lots of industrial purposes, including making chips. And so there are a lot of things that we did not do. We could have, alleviated some of the tariffs on fertilizer inputs, given that most of the fertilizer, or not most, but a large share of fertilizer and inputs goes through this strait. There are so many things that could have been done in advance of all of this, just to anticipate some of the pain, some of the economic pain, forget about, again, the loss of life. And none of that planning was done, despite the fact that they obviously want us to believe
and to
that
your,
they had
to your
planned all
point
of this.
about the planning that could be done to help with the oil markets, energy markets, fertilizer, where we ended up because of the lack of plan is that Russia has gotten sanctions relief, despite all of its bad actions, because they can still supply oil outside of the Strait of Hormuz. So once again, Putin benefits.
Okay, where do you see that? Okay.
You guys are talking like serious people. and we're not dealing with that. I think that
No, this is a great and almost not funny point. I mean,
no,
this is unserious.
It's funny because we have to laugh at it because that's how I choose to cope. But what I think is we're missing is that this is like war by Mad Libs. Like he's winging it. You know what an administration cares about by how they spend their time. That's what their priorities are. And if you look at what this administration spends their time doing, it is making side deals in the Middle East for crypto and real estate. They are evading the legal consequences of the unconstitutional things that they've done. They are trying to stop elections from going forward in 2026, looking for any idea they can, trying to evade the Epstein files from being, fully unearthed. There are still a million more files. And so that's what they actually spend their time doing.
Well,
they're also
don't
borrowing
forget the
$50 billion.
I think don't forget the memes, right? Because who they're speaking to
it's a
online.
content factory now.
Yeah. But I think we also have to recognize, and I say this all the time, everything that this president does, we have to assume is in the shadow of, like, let's stop talking about Epstein, period. Yeah. But he's obsessed with now shoe sizes. He's obsessed with, he was obsessed with the East Wing, but he's dropped that. Then it's the golf course in D.C.
Now a construction zone.
But he is an arsonist in the sense that he's just destroying and ripping up everything in America to distract us from the very real conversation that we're not having.
But even the memes, can you tell me, you are our social media guru, who are they for? Who is the base that's watching these Call of Duty, NFL, ridiculous videos when this is a war? When we have already lost lives, people are injured, and more people are getting deployed.
I think that you are underestimating the level of nihilism that exists amongst the general populace, especially online, and that is exacerbated by the types of bot campaigns, foreign influence, all of these narrative campaigns that actually make people feel even more like hopeless. Like none of this feels real to anybody. Like we're sitting here talking about the wedding that's being postponed because of a deployment, because that takes time. None of this feels real to people. Trump has made everything feel sort of like whatever, nothing's real. Like if we just
it's
no money is real.
It's war is entertainment. It's war is content. I think that's really what
the
this
gamification.
is about.
And when is
he ever served? Right? I mean, he
never.
And he didn't even like.
Okay, but hold on. Yes, but whether or not Donald Trump served isn't what the American people are focused on, and that doesn't impact whether or not we would be at war. Right now, the issue at hand, what is going to be the game plan to get out? If he says, I'm going to claim victory, but the regime is still in place, then what was the point of this?
There is no point. It doesn't matter because, to your point, there was no preparation. And when I say served, I mean, this is a person who doesn't understand public service. Pete Hegseth doesn't understand serving or public service. They don't see this as real people. So the fact that when we lost our first 4 servicemen, they like it as a PR stunt in the sense that, like these are people who serve their country. But Donald Trump doesn't even like to visit the fallen soldiers who return home.
And this is where, former diplomat here, the challenge of when that is how you show up in the world, and now showing up consistently like that, our allies had no idea what was going on. I mean, the fact that the embassy in Riyadh, a U.S. embassy in Riyadh, was on fire because of an Iranian drone is a joke. It should never have gotten to that point in the situation, and it was predictable that that would have been a target. But then you see how much effort was put in to stabilize Iraq, to stabilize Afghanistan. And I'm not talking about that this is going to be a forever war. Forever war actually would be the slightly better version of the United States breaking it and sticking around to try to fix something. This is worse. This is hastening the fact that ISIS came out of the vacuum of Iraq, that the Taliban came out stronger after the vacuum of the United States. So you look at Trump leaving in 4 or 5 months, U.S. soldiers who've had their lives disrupted and or maimed and killed in action. And what do you have? A hardened regime with another Ayatollah Khomeini, who now blames the United States for killing his mother, his father, his wife, his sister, his grandson, and his son.